It was late 2002. Having just passed the state certification exams, I joined the police department. Initially, there wasn't much pressure, but within a few days, I was sent to the academy in Baton Rouge for training. It was a long and memorable 6-month period. In those 6 months, as much as I struggled, I enjoyed it just as much. But the professional start of my service life was from March 2003. My first posting was at Willow Creek Sheriff's Office in rural Evangeline Parish, Louisiana. A new experience. However, those sweet experiences gradually began to turn bitter in my life. I had always wanted to join law enforcement, that's true, but constantly seeing brutal victims, gruesome corpses, and mountains of chaos before my eyes made my heart grow heavy. I felt as if I couldn't tolerate any of it anymore. I felt suffocated. Right at the beginning, I became mentally devastated, so I tactfully took a 2-week leave and returned home. The days were passing quite well, but as soon as the leave ended, a strange feeling started stirring inside my mind. I didn't want to go back at all, but it was a cleared government job. When I have dedicated myself to the service of the community and the country, I must go. So, without overthinking, I reported back in. After returning, a month or two passed quite well. But suddenly one day, a suicide case was filed at my station. The time was perhaps 8:30 p.m. One of our local guys came and informed us that a young woman had committed suicide by hanging herself in the small community of Bayou Shadow outside Willow Creek. So, without delay, I set out for Bayou Shadow with 2 deputies and a driver. But for some reason, nature repeatedly obstructed us from reaching that area that night. It was the month of May. Many people call this time of year the sweet season around here. But that night, that saying was proven wrong once again. Continuous torrential rain and lightning everywhere. Every person in the area was disturbed. And what about us? After all, we were law enforcement. We had taken the responsibility to stand by folks by braving such storms. But for some reason, that day we were repeatedly facing obstacles. The SUV we set out in broke down once in the middle of the back road. Once we had to stop because of the rain and lightning. And another time, we wasted a lot of time getting stuck in the mud. But finally, with great difficulty, we managed to reach Bayou Shadow. The surprising thing was, as soon as we reached Bayou Shadow, the torrential rain and lightning stopped abruptly. At that time, no one really took the matter seriously, because another problem had surfaced. Although we knew the area, we didn't know the exact address of the house. And due to the rain, there were no people around whom we could ask. Still, we slowly moved forward with the SUV. Moving a bit further, we noticed a young woman standing by the bank of a bayou pond. We went forward and directly asked her, "Listen, we heard someone committed suicide around here this evening. Do you know anything about this? Actually, we're looking for that house's address. Ma'am, do you know it?" Seeing us and hearing such a question, the woman seemed a bit startled. But the next moment, I saw she quite naturally showed us the road to the house. The time was 9:48 p.m. Upon entering the deceased's house, I learned from someone that it was a local Catholic family. There were many people in the house, and everywhere, the family members were screaming in grief. Without talking to anyone else, we directly entered the room where the woman had committed suicide by hanging. But upon entering that room, it felt as if a thunderbolt had struck all 4 of our heads at once. Wait, how is this possible? The woman who showed us the way and led us to the house, her corpse was hanging here.
This sight left the 4 of us speechless for some time. We kept looking at each other's faces, wondering, did we actually see correctly? Because if the woman who gave us the address were truly someone else, we might have assumed one of us saw wrong or made a mistake. But all 4 of us saw her together, and now
Her corpse was hanging right in front of us. After standing in silence for a while, we called the woman's brother and asked if he had any other sisters. But since his answer was negative, we didn't delay and started our work. The woman was hanging with a thick rope looped around her neck from the ceiling. The entire tongue had protruded from the mouth, and it looked as if the eyes were about to pop out. It was a gruesome sight. We cut the rope hanging from the ceiling with the help of a utility knife and brought the body down. The rope was quite thick and clean. To be honest, I had never seen such a rope before. As soon as the loop was unwound from the neck, I saw a very thick mark had formed. Even though the woman's brother repeatedly tried to push the tongue back into the mouth, it wasn't possible. That was the first suicide case of my life, so I was somewhat nervous, and I was repeatedly communicating with the senior sergeant. After finishing all the work there and preparing to take the body for autopsy, the deceased's father called me and said he didn't want to pursue any case. But in our protocol, that is not possible. Since the case has come to us, an autopsy must be done, and the real circumstances must be determined. So I couldn't keep his request that day. The woman's body was wrapped in a sheet and lifted into the SUV. The woman's brother agreed to go to the morgue with the four of us. Then we set out for Evangeline Parish General Hospital. It was then almost 11:30 p.m. Bayou Shadow to the parish hospital is a road of 1.5 to 2 hours. While traveling normally, those strange events started happening to us again on the way, but this time, the intensity was excessive. Whenever we stepped outside Bayou Shadow with the body, suddenly a torrential rain and lightning started with a gusty wind. But this time, we didn't wait anywhere for the rain to stop. For about 10 to 15 minutes after crossing Bayou Shadow, there were no problems. But right after that, everything started to change. A vehicle running at 60 miles per hour couldn't even reach a speed of 30 miles per hour. I was sitting inside the SUV with the deceased's brother to question him about the suicide. When I asked the driver the reason for suddenly slowing down the vehicle, he couldn't give an answer. However, it supposedly felt very heavy to him. Later, even after stopping and checking the vehicle, no problem was found. So we started our journey again. No, the problem didn't end here. As I was saying, this time the intensity was excessive. After we crossed Willow Creek Town Square and reached the old drawbridge over the river, we saw the bridge was closed due to maintenance. There was no way to cross the river at this late hour without a ferry. I told the deputy to get off the vehicle and arrange a ferry. Following my words, he got off the vehicle, went to the riverbank, and returned after a while, having arranged a ferry. Then we all got off the vehicle one by one and boarded the ferry with the body. I told the driver to take the SUV straight to the station. If needed, I would call him later. Excluding the woman's body, there were a total of 5 people on the ferry. The woman's brother, 2 deputies, and the ferry operator were inside, while I was under the open sky. It felt quite good to cross the river in the cold breeze, but with us was a body that had just committed suicide. I don't know why, even with so many people beside me, an owl's call kept echoing in my mind. A little later, that premonition seemed to come true when the ferry stopped mid-river.
Right then, the freezing cold hand gripped my left hand very tightly. Out of fear, I jerked my hand away and saw the woman's body floating in the air and crashing onto our ferry. At such behavior, the woman's brother became quite furious, rushed toward me and said, "What did you just do? Why did you pull my sister's hand?" But for some reason, I couldn't say anything to him. Perhaps I was very scared. At one point, unable to say anything, I extended my left hand toward him and I signaled him to look at the marks on my hand. After that, he probably sensed something, so without saying anything, he went back and sat down quietly. After that,
no more problems occurred while on the ferry. However, where it usually takes 10 minutes to cross the river, the ferry seemed to not move at all. I asked the ferry operator the reason many times, but he didn't answer at all. Seeing me asking repeatedly, at one point a deputy said, "Sir, there's no need to ask him anything more. We'll reach very soon." Hearing him, I didn't say anything more. But that day, it took us over an hour to cross the river. Sex, however, while getting off the ferry, the incident repeated again. As the four of us were getting off the ferry with the body, right then the body again gripped my right hand tightly with one of its hands. This time, out of fear, I let go of the body and it fell to the ground. Just like the previous time, the woman's brother rushed toward me in anger, but this time I told him everything and showed him the marks on my hand. He understood the matter and said, "After this, you don't have to carry the body anymore. The three of us will somehow manage to take it to the hospital." When we landed on the other side of the river with the body, it was almost dawn. Everywhere, there was no one except for a few truck drivers. Then I sent a deputy to arrange a truck and lifted the body onto it. From the old drawbridge to the parish hospital is a half-hour journey. Riding the truck while reciting prayers, we were moving forward quite well. However, this time a new problem arose. The sheet the body was wrapped in suddenly kept slipping off the body's face. Even though I fixed it once or twice, it kept slipping off. Right then, there was no wind at all on the road, so I stopped the truck and told the deputy to get up from the front and sit in the back, and I moved to the front. At that moment, I was feeling very uncomfortable, and I was restless with anxiety. Seeing me so restless, the woman's brother asked the reason. I explained the matter to him. He lowered his head, heard the account, and said, "If something happens after this, I will take responsibility and see to it." Meta quote sex quote colon 2.5. Meanwhile, in such a situation, the condition of the other two deputies was just like mine. Anyway, with great difficulty, we finally reached the hospital, and as soon as I arrived there, I spoke directly with the doctor and arranged to send the body to the morgue. Following my instructions, the doctor finished the formalities and sent the body to the morgue via the attendant. After the body was taken to the morgue, I contacted my senior sergeant and tried to return to the station using various excuses. But he refused in every way and gave all the responsibility of the case to me. After that, I felt like I couldn't tolerate anything anymore. I had encountered something so strange for the first time in my life, so handling such a big shock became very difficult for me. Anyway, despite that, I stayed at the hospital, and after all the work, I began preparations to return with the body. The next day at 5:30 p.m., the doctor finished all the examinations, handed over the body to us, and said it would take 48 hours to get the report. So we set out for the deceased's house with the body. I thought what happened last night wouldn't trouble us during the day, but after crossing the old drawbridge and getting off the ferry into the Sov, suddenly it became dark all around and a storm began.
As we moved a little further, torrential rain and lightning accompanied the storm. In the midst of this, suddenly our vehicle also stopped in the middle of the road. A little while later, the woman's brother began screaming and shouting in extreme excitement. I called him from the front of the SUV and asked the reason for being so agitated. What he said would chill anyone's bones, even in daylight. He had supposedly just seen his sister standing right against the side of our vehicle, and apparently he had seen this not once, but several times. Hearing him, none of us had the courage to stand on that road. So we told him not to look outside, and somehow reciting prayers, we started moving again. No more problems occurred in between. However, upon reaching Bayou Shadow, the storm and rain stopped, and suddenly
about 10 to 15 dogs started barking loudly and followed us. That was all for that day's incident. After that, everyone returned to the station, and from there to the deputy quarters. I thought all the problems might end here. However, I never even imagined that something even more deadly was waiting for me after 48 hours. As usual, the middle 2 days passed quite well. But on the third day at noon, a phone call from a senior sergeant made it feel as if the sky had crashed onto my head. I had gone to another area for personal work. He called and directly told me to be present at the station. When I asked the reason, he said, "Emily Moreau, your DNA has been found in Emily Moreau's autopsy report." Emily Moreau, that woman whose suicide case I was handling. Hearing this, I left all my work and ran toward the station. It hadn't occurred to me or entered my mind why my DNA was detected in the autopsy. Upon reaching the station, I saw the woman's brother sitting with 2 men to talk to me. Then I met my senior sergeant and learned that the woman's brother had informed him that while carrying the body, Emily had gripped my hand twice. Therefore, the doctors identified DNA from under the fingernails. Although initially no one wanted to believe the matter, but later, when the other 2 deputies spoke in my favor, everyone understood. Since the woman's family was repeatedly asking to close the case, my senior officers would close the case based on their mutual discussion. But my work wasn't finished yet. Due to a few signatures and some paperwork, I had to go to Evangeline Parish General Hospital again that day. After finishing the work, as I was leaving, I saw a middle-aged man calling me by gesturing with his hand from a distance. As I approached, he began to say, "Hello, officer. Do you recognize me? I'm the hospital's morgue attendant. That woman who committed suicide the other day, you guys brought the body, right? I handled the autopsy on that one. After the work that day, I looked for you a lot but didn't find you. Today, if you could give a little time, I'd like to say a few words." Initially, hearing him, I thought he wanted some tip for that day's work. Actually, before such work, morgue attendants sometimes use substances. So maybe. Anyway, putting aside those thoughts, I gave him permission, and he told me some things that made returning to the station alone seem very difficult. His words were like this: "Officer, I've been associated with this work for almost 13 years. In my life, I've handled many bodies. If I estimate, it would be around 250. But even while handling those 250 bodies, I have never been as nervous as I was while handling that woman's body. That day, right before starting the work, I don't know why, I started feeling extremely unwell. And it repeatedly felt like a female voice was telling me, 'Watch out. If even one part of this body remains outside, there will be no one in this world to save you. This body belongs to us.' I heard this clearly. But then I was in a daze, so I didn't pay much attention. The strangest thing was, when all the tests were over and the doctor left, while I was closing the body, I felt someone repeatedly reminding me, 'You forgot this, you forgot that.' But it felt to me like the voice was different this time, and it was a woman's. At that moment, I started getting very scared. So, finishing the work quickly and signing the log, I set out for home. But danger didn't leave me. On the way home, 3 or 4 times, it felt like someone was following me. I looked back several times but didn't see anything. But just as I reached very close to my house, I looked back for the last time. Then I saw that woman standing a few steps away from me with another person. After that, I didn't look back. I just ran straight home. Since then, I haven't had any problems. I was looking for you to see if you know anything about this, or if you can help me. And whether anyone else noticed or not,
That day I saw those red marks settled on both your hands. After hearing the incidents from the attendant, I only asked one question. On the day she followed you, who was the other person with the woman? The attendant replied, I couldn't make out the face from a distance, but she was also a woman, and she was wearing an orange-colored dress. After that, I gave some money to that attendant and directly called the station, and using the excuse of work, I asked them to send a deputy. Later, when the deputy arrived, I went to the station with him that day. Anyway, after that, almost everything was going fine. Day by day, almost a week passed without anything happening to me. And truth be told, in those 7 days, I had completely forgotten the matter. But on the 8th day, another strange incident occurred. That day I had a dream. From the dream, I understood that the woman named Emily Moreau came into my dream and was saying in a very mournful tone, my death was not natural. Knowing everything, why did you stop the investigation at the word of authority? I didn't die by my own will. I was forced toward death. So please, investigate again. As soon as the voice ended, I woke up. Leaving the bed, I sat and thought about the matter for a long time, but I couldn't find any lead. So I talked to the other 2 deputies and the driver to find out if they had seen anything in their dreams. When I asked them, they said none of them had a dream. So I also tried to console myself by thinking of the dream as a normal, ordinary dream. But surprisingly, the next day I had the exact same dream. Now, doubt started to take root in my mind, so without reopening the case officially, I started looking into it on my own. First, I met Emily Moreau's brother, and I questioned him anew, but I couldn't collect much information from there. Later, I also discussed the matter with her father, but there was no special benefit in that either. I only learned this much. She was a very cheerful woman, and she was supposed to get married in a few days. Hearing about the marriage, I tried a lot to contact the groom's side. The groom's name was Ryan Moreau. They were also local folks. However, since I didn't notice anything suspicious among them, I returned to the quarters quite disappointed. I was quite tired that day, so I went to bed a bit early, but I couldn't fall asleep. Suddenly, while thinking about the case, it felt as if someone was whispering in my ear. They were not human. Hearing the words, I got startled and sat up in bed. Did I actually hear correctly, or was it a mistake of my mind? It took almost a day to understand the matter, because later, as there was no progress in the investigation, I had that dream again. But this time, in the final part of the dream, Emily came and said that none of those who killed her were human. After that, as usual, I woke up. But even this time, I couldn't find any match between the dream and reality. So that day, I contacted a pastor I knew in the area. After talking to the pastor and telling him about the dream, he asked for a day's time and said he would let me know everything after a day. Early the next morning, right after morning service, the pastor came to meet me, and he started by saying, "There is much danger ahead of you. Take leave as soon as possible and return to your family home."
When I asked the pastor the reason, he said that at this moment, there are 2 evil spirits with me who are tactfully trying to harm me. He told me to go to my family home as soon as possible, but it's not possible to get leave suddenly, and I also couldn't understand why 2 spirits had followed me. It just wouldn't enter my head. Anyway, despite that, following the pastor's words, I applied for leave. However, due to not being able to show a proper reason, the leave was cancelled. Taking some protective steps after talking to the pastor, I thought about the matter for 2 days, but I couldn't find any clue. Because if there are any evil spirits with me, why am I not getting any sign of them? And somehow they would show themselves or try to scare me. In this case, that wasn't happening either. I was only seeing the dream, and that too was quite normal. Meanwhile, while thinking about these matters, some obstacles appeared again in the investigation work. So maybe on the third day, I had the dream again. But this time, Emily was probably a bit annoyed with me. Just like the previous time, she was telling me everything, but this time, I noticed a look of annoyance on her face. So, as soon as I woke up in the morning, I started looking for a well-known pastor again. Fortunately, I found the contact of a respected pastor from a friend. When I contacted him on the phone through my friend, he told me to go and meet him at a specific place in the afternoon. Finishing all my work, I went to meet the pastor that afternoon. As soon as I met the pastor and greeted him, he told me to sit, and before I could start talking about the problems, he started saying everything himself. But hearing what he was saying could make anyone lose their senses. He looked at me and began to say, "The suicide case of the local woman you handled, she was no ordinary person, and her death didn't happen naturally either. Do you know she practiced occultism? In October of last year, she started learning dark arts from a female practitioner. After some time, she had mastered the details of black magic quite well. But the trouble started elsewhere. Her mentor, that is, the purpose of that female practitioner, was not good at all. She wanted to make the woman proficient in the occult and use her for her own purposes. However, Emily, meaning that woman, wanted to stop contact with the female practitioner after acquiring some knowledge herself. Although I don't know the main reason for that. And following this, that practitioner became furious and, by taking her under control, killed the woman through an evil spirit. There is another thing here. A question might arise in your mind. Why did the person you contacted before mention two spirits? And why did the hospital attendant say that two people followed him that night? Probably the woman had left some work unfinished before she died, and there was an evil spirit with her. Later, maybe the female practitioner somehow brought that spirit under her control as well, and tried to do the work collectively. And so those two spirits are scaring people together. Hearing the pastor's words, I sat in silence for a while. What should I say? What should I ask? Nothing was coming to my mind. However, when I asked why they had come after me and the way to get rid of it, he said the exact same thing. He didn't know the main reason for coming into my dream either, but he informed me that if I returned to my family home, there would be a solution to this. He taught me some prayers and told me to recite them every day. Before returning, the pastor told me to stop this investigation and forbade me from going deep into the mystery. I don't exactly know what he meant that day. After finishing the talk with the pastor, I was returning to the quarters with a very fearful heart. Right then, someone from the station called and informed me that a conflict had broken out among some people in Bayou Shadow over land and property, and it had turned into a physical fight. As some people were seriously injured, I was told to reach there quickly with backup. Receiving the call from the station, I also reached the quarters quickly. Getting ready, I set out for Bayou Shadow with the team.
Arriving there, I saw the situation was quite serious. Still, somehow managing it, a community mediation was arranged at the request of the local elder. The arrangement for the mediation was made by the pond bank of the elder's house. But here too, it seemed the strange events wouldn't leave me alone. During the mediation, my eye suddenly fell on a cypress tree on the other side of the pond. It wasn't completely dark yet. I saw a middle-aged man wearing a white shirt, gesturing with his hand, calling me and trying to convey something. At first, I couldn't quite tell if he was calling me specifically. But in an instant, a strange event occurred.
The man suddenly stood there with his hand on his neck and his tongue out, in that exact manner, the manner in which we had all seen Emily hanging from the ceiling. Then I realized that the man wanted to help me somehow regarding the suicide case. I wanted to get up from the mediation once and go to that side of the pond. But later I thought it wouldn't be right to go now. Shortly after, fortunately, the evening church bell started. Taking the opportunity, I proposed to continue the discussion after a break, and everyone agreed. When I got up from there, I didn't see the man under the cypress tree on the other side of the pond anymore. There were several other deputies with me. They were patrolling all around while the discussion was ongoing. I called them and asked about the man in the white shirt on the other side of the pond. They surprised me by saying that no one was there. Apparently, some of our men were patrolling right there. They hadn't seen anyone like that. Then who was that? The question still haunts me today. If I could have talked to him that day, maybe I could have uncovered a big mystery. And maybe my problems would have been solved. Anyway, after that, I gradually forgot everything and focused on my own work again. I also stopped the investigation work. Meanwhile, I was reciting the prayers taught by the pastor every day. So, I wasn't seeing any dreams, and the problems weren't appearing. After about 2 weeks passed like this, I became completely healthy, and the problems were resolved. I say this with regret for myself. Because I was healthy and perhaps very happy that day, I forgot to recite the prayers. And taking that exact opportunity, they appeared in my dream again. But this time, Emily appeared before me in her fast, fierce form. In a very angry voice, she laughed and said that if I didn't complete the investigation of her case and uncover the mystery within 1 week, then no one in the world would be able to save me. After seeing this dream, I contacted the pastor again. Hearing the dream, the pastor taught me prayers to protect myself, along with some spiritual practices. I kept performing them, but after 4 or 5 days, I started being negligent again as before. That day, there was a wedding invitation for one of my colleagues. So, getting ready in the evening, I set out for his house with a gift in hand. The distance from the quarters to his house was about 40 minutes. When I had almost reached near the wedding house, suddenly, I felt like someone was following me. After looking back several times and not seeing anyone, those words spoken by the hospital attendant started coming to mind one by one, and the amount of fear seemed to double. After a long time, everything started to turn dark before my eyes, and a little later, it cleared. But as one darkness cleared, another darkness seemed to descend on my life. Upon opening my eyes, I saw hundreds of corpses lying all around the road. And the most surprising thing was that all of them were Emily's corpses. Seeing that sight, I screamed, "Lord!" and took off running. Since the wedding house was not very far from the scene, I reached the wedding gate in one run and collapsed. Then some people held me, made me sit on a chair, gave me water, and when they asked the reason for this, I passed it off by saying dogs were chasing me. But the problem was unwilling to leave me then. Taking the gift box in hand to submit it at the reception, I saw a woman sitting there. Going closer, I wrote my name in the register, submitted the gift, and as soon as I looked up, I was startled and stepped back 2 steps because it was no one else. It was Emily. I turned around and started walking toward the wedding tent, only to be even more startled. This time, it wasn't 1 or 2. It seemed like every woman present there had Emily's face. Everyone's eyes and tongue seemed to have protruded from their mouths, exactly as had happened in Emily's case. Unable to bear this sight, at one point, I lost consciousness. When I regained consciousness, I was lying on a bed, and my colleague was beside me with some other people. When asked the reason for suddenly fainting, I tried to pass it off by talking about the stress of the days running around for the job. After that, I wanted to leave from there using illness as an excuse, but no one wanted to let me go without eating. Even after finishing the meal, it wasn't possible for me to go from there alone. I was terrified to an extreme degree. So, using the excuse of illness, I asked them to arrange a ride for me. However, since no such arrangement was possible, a truck was fixed for me. I also got into the truck while reciting prayers. While going, I kept my eyes closed for much of the way, but after going a little distance, as soon as I opened my eyes and looked at the floor or space in the truck, I saw a corpse wrapped in a white cloth on the truck. I wanted to scream, but not even a sound would come out of my throat. Right at that moment, the truck driver said to me, "Sir, don't be afraid. There won't be a problem. We've almost arrived." Hearing the truck driver's words, I seemed to regain my power of speech. I asked, trembling with fear, "What do you mean, don't be afraid? What are you trying to say?" Hearing my words, the truck driver gave no answer and simply dropped me in front of the quarters, took the fare, and left. After that incident, it was not possible for me to stay there for even a moment. So, using various excuses and through a relative, I took a 21-day leave and returned to my family home in Alexandria. And I started reciting the prayers taught by the pastor again. After returning home, I was quite well for the first 3 days. But after that, I suddenly started falling ill. I couldn't eat or drink properly. Every night, I felt more pain in both legs. When I told my mother, she told me to see a doctor. However, I could understand that what was happening to me was not something normal. So, I told my mother to contact a local healer. My mother is a simple person, so without asking much, she was quite happy. My mother gave me the responsibility of finding a good healer. My uncle loves me very much. He had probably sensed something supernatural upon hearing about my illness, so without delay, he found a good healer and took me to him. The healer was probably actually good. Going to his place, I saw a crowd of many people waiting to meet him. We also waited for a while. My uncle had already told the healer everything about me beforehand, so before my uncle and I entered the healer's room, he came out on his own, took water from a vessel, and while reciting blessings, sprinkled it all around me. Then he took both of us into the room. But why did he suddenly come out on his own and sprinkle water all around while reciting? That question was still spinning in my head. Seeing me somewhat pensive, the healer himself said, "Two spirits have followed you, son. If I hadn't sprinkled the blessed water, they would have entered my room with you. It would have been your problem in the room. That's why I drove them away." Hearing the healer's words, I felt a bit relieved. Then, when I told the whole incident to the healer, he said, "Look, son, I also can't say for sure why they went after you specifically when there were so many people in the incident. So, there is one way here. You must get married as soon as possible. It would be best if the wedding happens within the next week. After that, whatever happens will be my responsibility." After giving the healer his fee, my uncle and I returned home. Meanwhile, after returning home, when my uncle told my mother and father everything, a wail of crying broke out in the house. After that, there were some other family matters. Let's not talk about those. However, from the next morning, my parents started looking for a bride for me. For 2 or 3 days, many girls were seen, but word of the events happening to me had spread throughout.